It's bizarre to look back a year and remember when life was simple. Today, I'm a different person. Literally. I have to eat every night at exactly 6 p.m. If I don't, there are consequences. It started after my graduation dinner as a dental technician. My family took me to an elite, shoes-off restaurant downtown. The kind of place where they wash your hands in eucalyptus water because the food is meant to be felt. I'm a ramen and peppers guy, but that night, the famous Chef Mike personally served me a zesty halibut with asparagus foam at exactly 6 p.m. He called it a gift for my refined palate. That night, I received an anonymous deposit. $80. No name, no note. The next day, I ate ramen at 6 p.m. sharp. Beep, $65. A few days later, steak and red wine. Beep, $1,200. I became obsessed. I realized someone wasn't just watching me. They were grading me. I tested the boundaries. I ate in a pitch-black bathroom behind a shower curtain. Beep, $45. I realized that unless this thing was using sonar, it didn't need light to see what I was doing. It was deeper than that. I developed a system. 50 cents for yes, 25 cents for no. Through these cents, I learned the truth. My benefactor wasn't a demon or an alien. It was something that used to be a person. It lived in South Dakota, but it couldn't see, touch, or taste on its own anymore. It was living vicariously through me. The messages on my phone started getting specific. Good taste. Best tongue. More salt. Then Chef Mike showed up at my door. He was frantic. He'd been the previous host until I showed up. He started coming over to cook for me, desperate to stay relevant to this invisible entity. We were making thousands a day, but the cost was my life. The entity's schedule became mine: work, gym, dinner, sleep. It was sitting in the same space as my body, savoring me like a juice box. When Amy, my girlfriend, finally begged me to stop, we tried to break the cycle. We skipped dinner for a week. The money stopped. Peace returned. Then we both lost our jobs on the same day. No layoffs, just us. I sat down at 6 p.m. that night with a bowl of spaghetti and asked the question, "Did you get us fired?" The deposit came in, $480.50. The 50 cents meant yes. Terrified and trapped, I tried one last desperate move. I sat down at 6 p.m. with a plate of orange juice, toothpaste, diced onions, and mayonnaise. I forced myself to eat until I was violently ill, hoping to poison the experience for the entity, to make my body a place it no longer wanted to live. The deposits stopped. For 3 days, I felt alone in my own skin again. I thought I had won. But this morning, I woke up with a taste in my mouth I didn't recognize. It wasn't toothpaste or onions. It tasted like expensive halibut and eucalyptus water. I think it's not waiting for 6 p.m. anymore. I think it stopped watching and started taking over. Here is the long-form horror story expanded into 5 distinct parts in English, written with a focus on suspense, atmosphere, and psychological dread. It all began as a celebration of my success. After years of studying to become a dental technician, my family took me to an elite, shoes-off restaurant where the food was an experience of touch and taste. At exactly 6 p.m., the legendary Chef Mike served me a specialized halibut dish. That night, a mysterious $80 was deposited into my account. I initially thought it was a banking error, but the pattern became undeniable. Every time I ate a meal at exactly 6 p.m., I was paid. Whether it was $65 for ramen or $1,200 for a dry-aged steak, someone was grading my palate. I tried hiding in a pitch-black bathroom to eat, but the notification still chimed. I wasn't just being watched. I was being monitored by something that didn't need light to see. The money became a drug, but the side effects were terrifying. Using a system of yes and no based on the cents in the deposits, I began to communicate with my invisible observer. I learned that my benefactor wasn't a ghost or a demon, but a consciousness located in South Dakota that could no longer feel, taste, or touch on its own. It was living vicariously through my nervous system. Soon, the messages became personal: more salt, perfect texture. I like the way your tongue moves. Chef Mike eventually revealed himself as a former host who had been discarded once the benefactor found me. I realized I was just the latest vessel in a long line of sensory slaves, kept in a golden cage of high-end kitchenware and anonymous wire transfers. My girlfriend, Amy, grew increasingly terrified as the atmosphere in our home shifted. She claimed she felt a cold weight in the room whenever I sat down to eat. The benefactor's demands grew more extreme. It began forcing me to eat things that caused me pain. Ghost peppers that blistered my mouth and raw meats that made me gag, just so it could feel the intensity of the sensation. When we tried to rebel by skipping the 6 p.m. schedule for a week, the consequences were swift and surgical. We both lost our jobs on the same day with no explanation. I sat down that night with a bowl of cold pasta and asked if it had orchestrated our firing. The deposit came back with 50 cents. Yes, I was no longer a partner in a deal. I was property. Driven by a desperate need for the truth, I used the blood money to track the benefactor's digital trail to a remote, high-security medical facility in South Dakota. Inside a restricted wing, I found the source, a withered, ancient billionaire kept alive in a sensory deprivation tank. His body was a useless husk, but his brain was wired into a massive neural network designed to piggyback on the senses of others. When I stood before the tank, my phone vibrated. A message appeared. "You have a beautiful face. I can't wait to see it from the inside." I realized then that the deposits weren't just for my meals. They were rent for a body the benefactor intended to move into permanently. In a final, frantic attempt to reclaim my life, I prepared a poisoned meal at 6 p.m. It was a vile slurry of toothpaste, orange juice, onions, and mayonnaise. A combination so revolting I hoped it would short-circuit the connection and drive the entity out of my mind forever. I ate until I was violently ill, vomiting until my throat burned. For a few days, the silence was blissful. The deposits stopped. I told Amy we were free and began packing our bags to disappear. But as we reached the car, I tried to tell her I loved her, and my voice wouldn't work. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a stranger's eyes looking back. The vile meal hadn't kicked him out. It had only broken my own willpower. I watched, a prisoner in my own mind, as my hands reached out to start the car, and a voice that wasn't mine whispered, "It's 6 p.m. and